Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. Now, if you are someone close to as a senior who has owned investment real estate for 20 plus years and is now considering a 1031 exchange to defer taxes while planning for retirement or legacy goals, stay tuned. This week's topic is definitely for you. What is it? The three questions seniors with long-held investment properties should ask before considering a 1031 exchange. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoy this episode of the Three Questions Podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. In 2026, 1031 exchanges remain one of the most powerful tools for seniors who have held investment properties for decades. With ongoing real estate market volatility, potential capital gain rate adjustments under recent tax reforms, and the critical intersection of retirement planning and estate strategies, a well-timed exchange can defer substantial taxes and preserve wealth for the next generation. Who better to address the three questions seniors with long-held investment properties should ask before considering a 1031 exchange than my friend James Bean. He's founder of Best 1031 Online, a website and YouTube channel dedicated to 1031 education. James, a VP with SVN, a national brokerage, guides investors through seamless 1031 tax-deferred exchanges nationwide, all across the country. With deep expertise in investment brokerage and 1031 strategies, James helps his clients maximize their built-up equity while aligning exchanges with their long-term financial goals. James, I want to thank you for coming back on the podcast. I cannot believe it's been 3 years, almost to the month, that you've been on with us. So great to see you again. Thank you for making time for us.
Hey, thank you, Wayne. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, but I am so appreciative of you having me back on. Thanks
Well,
so much.
I'm looking forward. We've got a lot to cover here today, and it's a great topic. But before we get to the questions, let's set the stage here for seniors in this situation. Many longtime property owners are now in their 70s or even their 80s, and they're sitting on significant equities after 20 years of appreciation. Now they're realizing that their kids don't want these assets. What they don't realize is how little of a return they're getting on their built-up equity. So for those who have been holding on to these properties to pass on to their kids, what's keeping them from selling the and exchanging it for a passive asset? What's holding them up?
What's really keeping them from making a move isn't a lack of opportunity. It's a combination of comfort, uncertainty, and misunderstanding. A lot of these owners that have had these properties for 20, 30 years, it's familiar, it's worked, and change feels unnecessary. They are often underestimating how inefficient their equity has become. And when you really break it down, measure the return against today's value, many of them are earning 2 to 4% on that equity.
They're barely beating inflation, and if you factor in the taxes they're going to pay on the income, they're maybe not even breaking even.
Correct. And that equity could be redeployed into something far more productive and far more passive. The misunderstanding comes from not understanding, not knowing that they can sell and defer those taxes through a 1031 exchange and move into something completely passive. What I've found is that many are confused by the like kind requirement, thinking that they have to replace their unwanted asset with the same type of asset, like a fourplex for another fourplex. So they're not holding because it's the best option. They're holding because no one has shown them a better one yet.
So what are they missing out on here in regards to that overall wealth and legacy planning from your perspective? I know I look at it from a financial advisor perspective, but from your, what are they missing out on?
Really missing out on two things. Number one, efficiency of their wealth and control of their legacy. On the wealth side, a lot of these owners that are sitting on these long held assets are producing very low returns. By not repositioning, they're leaving income and growth on the table that could be achieved through a properly structured 1031 into more efficient passive investments. On the legacy side, they're holding assets that their kids don't want, and they can actually create, stress instead of opportunity for that next generation. A 1031 exchange gives them the ability to reshape their portfolio into something that's easier to manage, more predictable, and actually aligned with how they want to pass wealth on.
So
So
how,
what they're really missing is the opportunity to turn a great asset they've outgrown into a better strategy for both income today and legacy tomorrow.
okay, so that's the perfect segue. Now we go back almost like 9 years here, so I do know you. It isn't like we have history here.
We do.
Uh, so, but for the folks who maybe didn't see the episode that we did 3 years ago, which we'll call 1031 Exchange 101, basically.
Right.
And I would encourage those who have the website or Apple or Spotify, you can actually scroll back and find that episode. It's there. I can't remember the number of it, but it's there. Just go back to April 2023. So I encourage you to do that. But just for the sake of the folks listening, how do you help your clients not just defer taxes? We've talked about that, but actually improve their lifestyle through the utilization of a 1031 exchange. So just walk us through all that you do.
Yeah, well, this is where a 1031 becomes more than just a tax strategy. The way I help clients is starting with looking at their lifestyle first, not the property. What do they want their day to day to look like? Less management, more income, more freedom. Chances are they want a little of all of that. Then I go out and source replacement properties nationwide that will match that vision, whether it's an absolute net lease or another truly passive option while still meeting all those 1031 requirements. So yes, we are deferring taxes, but more importantly, we're repositioning their equity into something that's more passive, more predictable, and better aligned with where they are in life today. And at the end of the day, it's not just about completing an exchange, it's about turning a transaction into a lifestyle upgrade.
I just saw something. This is just off the charts here. But why not? We know each other well enough that we can throw a curveball here. I don't think you'll mind too much. We were just talking a few minutes ago about how first of all, James and I are both members of a great organization called Provisors, and it's been a great benefit for both of us, no question. And you were just mentioning you were in a Provisors meeting. I believe you said it was in New York, I believe.
Right.
So reason I'm bringing this up, and I'm just curious. So let's say we're here in Los Angeles. So let's say you have a client here has a property that they want to sell. Is there anything that would stop them from wanting to buy or switch it with a property or doing an exchange with a property outside of the state of California, even as far away? I know it's extreme, but even as far away as New York State, or does that not work?
No,
Just
actually, it
curious.
does work. And not 100% of the time with my clients here in California, we're exchanging outside of California.
Interesting. Well, that segues. I will say this. This is again off the charts, but I'm going to put it up here now. We just talked. So I'm a member of Provisors. I'm a member of a group here in Southern California, and I'm also a member of a group in Miami, Florida. So again, I'm going to officially invite you to attend. I'm sure Florida will be a popular destination for some of your clients. So I definitely want to invite you to join my friends at my Provisors group in Miami, officially known as Miami 5. So.
I would love
Official.
to attend.
Love to see you there. So a lot of great context. So James, let's get right to our three questions seniors with long-held investment properties should ask before considering a 1031 exchange. And let's get right to our questions. Question number one. I've learned my kids do not want the property I have, and I want to sell it. My CPA has informed me that of the capital gains tax I will owe if I do not exchange. What are the rules of the 1031 exchange that I need to know before I decide to execute on an exchange? This is like right down your wheelhouse, James. So take it away.
Yes, thank you. And so there's five main rules, and I'll touch on the rules and I'll kind of highlight quickly each rule and how that kind of parallels with what we just talked about, why some of these seniors that have held these properties for so long are still holding on to them is because, you know, the education around the 1031 exchange is really quite poor. And I really blame the real estate community for that, because at the end of the day, a 1031 is triggered by a real estate transaction. Somebody has to sell a long-held investment property in order to qualify for a 1031 exchange. So, and real quick, part of the reason why, one of the main reasons why I've chosen this niche that I have is because I learned back in 2018 that more than 60% of exchanges fail every year. And we're going to touch on some of the reasons why that is. So the 5 rules. Rule number 1 is, and again, this is keeping in mind that the taxpayer / investor wants to defer 100% of their capital gains tax. So rule number 1 is you have to have a replacement property that is equal to or greater than the selling price of the relinquished property.
So to tell me, if you're selling your current property for $5 million, you have to buy one worth at least $5 million, if not more.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the physical size of the property. It has to do with the value of the property.
Correct. Yep. Rule number 2 is that you must engage a qualified intermediary to be the go-between during your exchange. So, said in layman's terms, when you put your property up for sale, it goes into escrow, it closes. Escrow must take your proceeds from that sale and wire them to a qualified intermediary. The QI holds those funds until I find you that replacement property and we buy that replacement property. The QI handles the money the whole time, because if you take any constructive receipt of those funds, you automatically void the opportunity for the exchange. Rule number 3.
Okay, I do have a question though. I knew this was going to happen.
Go ahead.
So, this is why I wanted to have you on here, because I know we could have free form conversation, James. Okay, so it is not out of the question though that I could be in this context, that there could be a willing seller of the other property waiting to go. It doesn't have to be a matter of having to go start from scratch searching, correct? In other words, it can be a building for sale and a building ready to purchase. So you still have to go through the intermediary, but both can be ready at the same time, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we'll actually touch on that a little later.
Sorry, I had to bring that up. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So rule number 3 is the replacement property must be a like-kind property. Here's where our seniors get really confused. So in the word of the tax code and the way the IRS looks at it, it's basically, we're talking investment property for investment property. A lot of people hear like kind, and it's really alarming how often I cross this bridge with somebody who's 65, 70 or older. Is they know about the 1031 exchange. They've heard people talk about it, and they hear like kind exchange. Oh, you want to do a 1031 like kind exchange? They have it in their head that if I own that fourplex that I mentioned earlier, that if I want to sell it and get out of it, I have to exchange into another fourplex.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or if I owned a single family home rental, I have to exchange into another single family home rental. Well, the people that have owned those properties for 20, 30 years, they don't want that same property. That's one of the reasons why they want to sell. They're tired of it.
Makes
right?
sense. Makes sense.
The whole comment about tenants, toilets, taxes, and termites, they don't want to deal with all that stuff anymore. So it's investment property for investment property. You can own a single family home rental and exchange into a hands-off commercial absolute net lease property that requires no management from you. So that's rule number 3. Rule number 4 is you have 45 days to identify that replacement property from the day of close. That clock starts ticking the day after you close on your relinquished property. And then rule number 5 is you have 180 days from that same day after close to close on the replacement property. The 180 days is never a problem. I've never in more
But
than
the
100 exchanges
45
I've
day, the
completed.
45 day rule seems to be the big one. And again, that is 45 days to identify.
Yes,
So how does that, sorry, again, getting into the weeds here. So that means it has to be documented, obviously. It isn't just some kind of
that's
hypothetical.
correct. Yes, there is a form that you have to fill out, and it has to be executed by you and the QI, because there are some identification rules that also need to be adhered to. We won't get into those today because that's a whole nother conversation. But um, in that 45 days, you do have to, fill out a form, the ID form, and it has to be executed before that 45th day. Otherwise, your exchange fails, which is one of the main reasons why exchanges fail. It's very because people wait. I have on my YouTube channel, I do a QI Corner episode a couple times a month, and Greg Burns with IPX 1031, we talk about this where he says, yeah, people will close, they'll open a file with me, and they're like, if we find something great, if we don't, that's okay too. Which just, if there's not a lot to lose as far as what they're going to pay in capital gains tax, and that might work for them. But it's alarming how many people think that 45 days, I should be able to find something. Well, depending on what you're looking for, that might be a challenge. So again, we'll talk on this more, but to your point that, yeah, with my clients, I'm typically out looking for deals before they even close on their replacement
I was just
property.
going to,
In fact,
exactly.
many times, I would say more than 75% of the cases I work on, my clients are actually closing on their replacement property within that 45-day window.
That's what I was going to get. Yeah. Okay. So that was what I was thinking. Like,
Yeah.
err on the side of caution. Okay. So I know we talked about this bit, and you talked about back in 2018, you discovered that 60% of 1031 exchange transactions fail, which segues me into, okay, what are the biggest mistakes that you see investors make when trying to complete one of these 1031 exchanges? And, obviously, how can they avoid them? So we've talked a little bit about the, procrastination, maybe. I don't really want to call it that, but I'll turn it over to you. What did you say are the biggest mistakes you're seeing?
Yeah. So again, we could do a whole episode on the top three mistakes made,
Mhm.
but they all have a common denominator. I'm going to let you guess. What do you think the common denominator is? Why?
Probably
Uh,
had something to do with timing, what I would suspect. Or the
no?
failure of planning would be mine. It's always
Bingo.
those who fail to plan, James, plan to fail. This has been my mantra going back almost 30 years. So,
Yeah. They don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
yeah.
And so, again, my QI buddy Greg and I talk about this all the time is that, people, they'll and it's amazing how often this happens. They'll put their property on the market. Okay, now it's under contract, it's in escrow, maybe it's a 45 or a 60-day escrow. And then somebody said, you should talk to your CPA. Do you have any idea what you're looking at in a capital gains tax when you do sell that property that you've held for more than 20 years? And many times they'll get on the phone, the CPA will tell them, yeah, you're going to be looking at, 300, 400, $800,000 in capital gains tax. And people freak out. And that's when the CPA calls me and says, James, they're already in escrow. They want to do an exchange. Now, because I am so talented and well versed in that space, shameless plug there,
Shameless self-promotion there.
that I
I
can usually
identify with
handle
that.
that. But it actually is the common reason why that exchanges fail is that they get into putting that property they wish to relinquish on the market without having a plan of their 1031 exchange. So, I tell people the first thing you should do when you decide you want to sell that relinquish the property that you've held for 20 years, your first call should be to your CPA. Long before you put it on the market, the first call should be to the CPA. Your second call should be to me.
I honest to God, I'm standing here listening to you, and I'm thinking to myself, it is almost just unbelievable that anyone who owns a property they've held it for, like, we're talking in some instances. I realize it isn't always time sensitive, but people have long held properties. We're looking 15, 20 plus years, that they would realize that they're probably sitting on quite the capital gain. And I find it shocking that they would jump ahead and get into escrow before talking to their CPA about the tax implication. It seems
Well, many
quite,
times what happens is,
James, between you and me, it seems so unlikely and improbable that when I hear it from you, I'm going, you have got to, I guess it's my Canadian naivete.
yeah,
What can I say? It's like, I can't believe that could be the case, but
yeah, it's actually one of the common things that I hear happen is, somebody that has, it's a nice asset, it's a good piece of property and they've held it for more than 20 years. And chances are very good that they get a lot of calls from brokers saying, hey, do you want to sell your property? And they say, no, we want to pass it to the kids. And
mhm.
when I have that conversation, I love to ask, when's the last time you had that conversation with the kids? Because I find most times the kids don't want it. But
They don't want the
anyways,
headache. Yeah.
what happens is that somebody will get an unsolicited offer and they're like, wow, at that price, I'll sell it. So the next thing you know, they're in escrow and then they find out after the fact. And so, yeah, again, the first call they should make is their CPA. John, we're thinking about selling our property. What's my tax hit if I sell this property for 4 million or $6 million? What am I looking at?
Yeah. And that's when they have the rude awakening as opposed to the spiritual awakening. Um,
Yeah, if I can share a quick story.
Go ahead.
The last time this happened was just 2 years ago. I have a CPA pal. His name is Scott, and he refers me a number of clients. But in this particular case, he calls me and he says, James, I need you to call my client David. I just got off the phone with him and he is hot. And I said, okay, what's the problem? And he said, well, he called me to find out what his tax bill would be on this, and it's going to be almost $300,000. And he ripped my head off through the phone. And I was like, yeah, because that's your fault that he made money on his property. But he had held a piece of land that they were going to develop, and turned out that he wasn't going to do it after all, and was already in escrow. In fact, was closing in a week. And again, you can't close without a QI. If you close without a QI, you're done.
Yeah.
I actually hear that happen a lot. People don't realize. I have people that refer me and they're like, yeah, we have a client. They want to do a 1031 exchange. They closed on their property last week. And I'm like, oh, I hope they had a QI. And they asked me, they hope they had
What's
a what?
that?
Yeah, exactly.
Oopsie.
So
So,
I get on the phone with David, and sure enough, yeah, he's like, just tell me what I got to do, James. I do not want to write a check for $300,000. What do I got to do? And I ended up handling him and getting it done. But it's just alarming on how often that scenario happens.
okay, I got to go back to your initial description here just to make sure I heard right. You said he had a piece of land,
Yeah,
like with no buildings?
correct.
Okay. So how does that qualify? Sorry,
No, that's actually a great question. I love how well you listen, Wayne.
I'm saying, yeah, well, thank you. I was like, once
Yeah,
in a
so
while.
as long as the property that you own is held for investment. So he bought a piece of land with the intent of, he was actually going to build a winery on it. It was land in Temecula. He was going to open a winery. He's got a very successful winery in Paso Robles, and he was going to do that. But when after COVID and everything, he's like, he just shelved the whole thing. He's like, I'm not doing it. But he had held it for, I think it was 15, 16 years that he had, and
The land in
the land had
Temecula.
appreciated.
But for those outside of Southern California, we call that the Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So it qualified because it was held for, and to be clear, the code says business, trade, or investment.
So,
So the qualifier or the distinction is that you can't sell your house and
yes.
exchange out of your house. If
Yeah.
it's a primary or even a secondary residence, no, it's got to be held for business, trade, or investment. And it's actually amazing how many business owners own their property, sell their property, don't realize they could have qualified for a 1031 exchange. So, if you're a doctor and you've got an office where you own the office and it's, your medical office and you want to retire, I've heard this too. They sell it and they get nicked for taxes. And they're like, oh, this tax bill is crazy. Do you know you could do a 1031 exchange? No, I thought that was only investment property. Well, it's also business or trade.
Well, no. So our topic today is the 3 questions seniors with long-held investment property should ask before considering a 1031 exchange. Joining me again is James Bean. He is the founder of Best 1031 Online. It's a website and YouTube channel that is dedicated to 1031 exchange education. James, let's move on to question number 1. Pardon me. Question number 2. Counting, right, James? Question number 2. I am a senior who has owned an investment property for many years. When actually should I start planning a 1031 exchange? It would seem appropriate question given what we just discussed. So over to you.
Right. So again, you should start planning that exchange prior to putting the property you wish to sell on the market. So the first call should be to your CPA. Call your CPA. They have all your tax records. They should know, how long you've held it, when you bought it, what your basis is going to be, and it's really how the IRS look at it. It's pretty simple. I mean, if you bought a property 20 years ago for $1 million and today it's worth $4 million, that's a $3 million gain. Now, I'm not a CPA, so I'm not going to give tax advice or anything like that here. However, there's that $3 million gain, and a lot of people say, well, I put $1 million into it, and so that should come off, and, blah, blah, blah. So, yes, the CPA is going to be able to figure out what the actual gain is. But what a lot of people don't realize is that you also depreciated it for 20 years, right? So if you have investment property, you get a depreciation schedule. If it's a single family home that you rented out for that long, residential properties are on a 29-year depreciation schedule. Commercial properties are on a 39.5-year depreciation schedule. So the bummer is that when you go to sell that, the IRS wants all that depreciation recapture. So all that money you depreciated over 20 years, that's also going to get taxed. So whatever that amount is, there's an additional 25% tax on that dollar amount, in addition to whatever your, the capital gains, the federal capital gains right now is 20%. And different states
that's
are
also
different.
deferred. That's also deferred if you do the 1031, right?
Correct. Yes. Everything gets deferred. Yes.
So,
however, the
okay, go ahead.
depreciation schedule does go with you to the next property. But again, that's a whole nother
Fair
conversation.
enough. Fair enough. We
Yeah.
always say deferring tax. That's what the game here is.
Right.
Until you can't or doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, going back to when they should plan, the easy answer is soon as you decide you want to sell that property you wish to get rid of, that's when you should start planning. You call the CPA, he'll tell you, and then you get to decide, you know what? And this happens a lot. People say, yeah, I'm gonna get nicked 200 grand in capital gains tax, but I don't want to deal with it anymore. And again, this has to do with a lot of lack of knowledge in what options are available. But I do have people. I had a client last year was looking at a $1.5 million tax bill and elected to pay the tax. I don't know why he would do that. I don't know really why he did it, but so once you get that, then the next move is call your broker. If you don't have a broker, you call me and we get an idea of what your property is going to actually sell for. And if you say, you know what, yeah, I'm looking at $500,000 or more in capital gains tax, I don't want to pay that. What are my options? And I know we're going to talk about that next, but we just start planning out, mapping out and planning. So we have a pretty good idea, roadmap, if you will, before we put your property on the market.
So, yeah, I guess that kind of segues into my question a bit because I was going to ask, once a decision has been made, right? Are there anything they should do before they even list the property? Is there some steps in between there? Like I decide between deciding and listing, is there a order of operations?
Yeah. So again, outside of talking to the CPA, you want to maybe talk to the broker that sold you that property initially, or um, somebody that's an investment broker. Because you want to go in, and if you haven't listed the property yet, then this is an opportunity for you to, maybe tweak some things with the property to make sure that you're going to get
That's what
highest
I
and
was
best
saying.
price.
That's what I was thinking about. Like there's got to be some maybe like just like when you sell your house, right? You want to go in and maybe and spruce it up a bit. So there are some fundamental things that you would do with any real estate property, but it gives you a
Right.
chance. But
Well, and here's
you do that before you list it because of that 45-day window. You don't want to be messing around with that stuff afterwards.
right. Especially if you're selling your property and you're dealing with a buyer who's going to be all cash, and so there's little due diligence period, and he's going to close quick. There's no financing involved, so you don't have to worry about loan docs and all that kind of stuff. That all of a sudden, wow, we're closing next week. Is the thing about the 45 days that I failed to mention before is it's 45 consecutive days. It's not business
I was
days.
just going to say, not 45 business days, it's 45 days.
Yeah, weekends, holidays, they all count.
Yeah, okay. Well, James, great information. Let's move on to
Wait,
question number.
one other point I
Oh,
wanted to make on this, because we're
okay.
we're talking about, people that are, north of 60, 65 years old, they've held these properties for a long time. People don't realize that, assets are assets, Wayne, you manage assets for people. How often do you look at their assets, and how often do you talk to them about things that they're currently holding?
Well, frequently,
Right. Well, people don't do that with their real estate.
yeah, they
They,
look at them differently. Yeah, exactly 100% correct. You don't
yeah.
measure.
So I have an issue right now, a case in front of me that a woman who is 82 years old, through a divorce, got a couple of brand new Jack in the Box restaurants that are leased by Jack in the Box corporate. And she got them. They were brand new when she got them. She got them 16 years ago, and they both were brand new stores with brand new 20-year leases. Great. Issue is that in the net lease world, they're not really meant to be a long-term hold. And so what happened was, because nobody was looking at those every 3 to 5 years, that now one of them has gone dark. Jack in the Box went dark on it. They still paying the rent. They're on a guaranteed lease. So she's got 4 more years of income, but the store is dark. And
There's no activity.
yeah, and so there's a lot of things that happen with real estate that sits vacant for a long time, but as soon as that lease runs out, now she's going to try to sell a doorstop, basically, because net lease assets are priced based on their income. If there's no income, then your value just the bottom fell out. So the point is that for anybody listening to this, if you have those long-term assets, please have somebody take a look at them. Get a broker opinion of value every couple of years, if nothing else, to update your insurance.
Hmm. So that's curious. So the situation, I get this straight again. She had two properties that she inherited that were basically retail out entities. They were Jack in the Box stores.
Mm-hmm.
One of the stores no longer is operational. It's a building that she is actually earning income from still because of the lease. So she's getting payments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's what they say. I would not be a very good attorney. Our litigator friends would be listening now going, Wayne, 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 Wayne. So I'm going to ask a question I don't know the answer to. Shame on me. So can she sell that property before that lease comes to an end?
Oh,
Can
of
she?
course. Yeah.
Okay, I don't assume anything, so I thought I would. So she could say, I don't want to wait until the 6 months.
Yeah. The best buyer for it right now is probably a merchant developer or another restaurant that has a drive-through concept that they would take it and they would get the income. Chances are they would negotiate with Jack in the Box on a buyout where they get 2 years worth of that income up front and use that to repurpose the building for their own concept.
Interesting.
What should have happened is, in a perfect world, she would have had somebody like myself looking at it every 3 years. And in 2021, when the QSR market was white hot, she could have sold both of them with little over 10 years of term left and made a significant profit on both of them and exchanged into new properties with new 20-year leases, which is one of my strategies. And this is kind of a strategy I show my clients in how to build that multi-generational wealth, is that you get these assets and you've heard this term, continue to kick the can down the road.
Down the road. Well, I think your Congress does that a little bit. Okay, never, I guess that's off topic a bit. Okay, James, let's move on to question number 3 here. Here we go. My wife and I are now retired and have owned an investment property since the 1990s. My kids don't want it, and we're ready to do something different with the equity. If we decided to complete a 1031 exchange, what are our options for replacement properties? We'd like to improve our cash flow, reduce management headaches, and better support our lifestyle and legacy planning goals. I know we've kind of touched on some of this, but I'm going to hand this one over to you as the final question of the day.
Right. So the properties that I specialize in are what's known as net lease. And they're commonly referred to as the triple nets, which it's an outdated term now. Although triple net leases do still exist, the problem with a true triple net lease is that there's still responsibility carve-outs in the lease that point towards the landlord. Typically, they're responsible for the roof and the structure, the parking lot, exterior elements. It really depends on how the lease is written. Some leases are only roof and structure, and that's it. Other ones are roof, structure, walkways, driveways, internal components like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, the signage. It just really depends on the lease. The assets I've specialized in are what on a lease term known as absolute net lease. The difference is that there are no responsibility carve-outs to the landlord. The tenants are 100% responsible for the building, the real estate, the upkeep, the maintenance, 100% of the operating expenses, including having the landlord as the additional assured in all the required insurances. It's mailbox money. That's how we refer to a net leased asset. It's mailbox money.
And you're saying that's becoming the more common structure today compared to the old triple nets.
Yes. Yeah, a lot more uses, 10, 15 years ago, the only really you would see are the discount stores, the drug stores, and the fast foods. Now, they're very common. The absolute net lease term are very common. And so a lot of people will say, well, James, why would a tenant sign a lease like that?
You're taking the words out of my mouth. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So the answer, number one answer, or the simple answer, is because those tenants, which again, we're talking about national credit tenants, tenants that have hundreds, if not thousands of locations. And so they don't want to own the real estate because they don't want that real estate on their balance sheet. That's the main reason. In addition to, they don't want to be in the real estate business. It's too volatile. And leases are a tax write-off. So that's the simple answer.
All right. Okay. You got me on that one. So as we're wrapping up here, and again, as great guest, great conversation. But just as we wrap, what's one step, an actionable step that a senior property owner could take right now if they're even just thinking about considering a 1031 exchange? What's the sort of something they could do now? They don't have to wait.
Well, probably reach out and get a broker opinion of value on their property. Because if you have that, and then that make a call to your CPA, and you tell your CPA, hey, we bought this property for 1.2 million. I just got a broker opinion of value. He's telling me that it's worth $3.5–4 million. What am I looking at if I sell the property for $4 million? So that they can just get an idea. And then, have a conversation with me. Because the thing is, I'm really the only broker in the whole country that really focuses on representing exchange buyers the way I do. I know that seems odd, but most investment brokers are focused on getting listings and, selling properties. I'm out to correct that failure rate. That's why my YouTube channel, my website are purely focused on the 1031 education, because the overall education is just really poor. And the people who are really losing the most are our seniors.
Interesting. So, well, on MySpace, I'm big on the planning aspect. So when I think about, listeners, clients of yours, clients of mine who want to integrate a potential 1031 decision with some capital forecasting, and we talked about this yesterday, actually, which is really a process where we really look at all aspects of income, taxation, expenses, liquid assets, hard assets, all of that to try to figure out, how much liquidity someone has. This is something we do. This is something I do with all my clients. So with that being the case, we're going to kind of combine what you do with what I do. So what do you think is kind of is there from that standpoint, of the clients coming to you saying, well, I want to figure out how this is all going to work. Would you say, is it the valuation process? Is that kind of where we need to know we need to know what you think the value of the property is? We need to know what the taxation is going to be. Would you say that's the first step, and then we could do a forecast based on those numbers?
Yes. The answer is yes. So I get a number of referrals from wealth management people as well.
Would I expect so?
Because most people that are high net worth have real estate in their portfolio somewhere. So that's really a perfect world, is that they decide, what, we just had this conversation with our kids. We learned they don't want it. And our broker tells us that we've got, $4 million worth of equity sitting there, and I'm just not getting a great return on that equity right now. You made a great return on your investment, but your return on equity is. So I know what it's worth. I don't want to pay the capital gains. I'm clear now after talking with my CPA what I'm looking at as a tax hit. And James has told me some options of how I could not only get something passive, but even increase my annual income from what I've been getting, and increase my quality of life, because I'm not going to have to deal with the tenants. I don't have to take calls from anybody, and I'm getting mailbox money. The next move is, okay, let's sit down with your wealth manager and your estate attorney so you can update your trust, do the estate plan so that the property is going to pass in the right fashion. So there's a succession plan involved, but get the wealth manager involved. So now, because now the wealth manager, before, maybe you were dealing with, $60,000 a year in this income that they were getting from the real estate, where now all of a sudden you got $160,000 a year. What are we going to do with that income to help solidify the retirement plan and the long-term financial goals?
One last question I just thought of as we're standing here. One more time. What percentage of these properties are being held inside of an LLC? Is that the most common place they're being held, James? Is it, or as opposed to being just held?
Well, the ownership entity is an LLC, and then they're held within their trust.
Right, exactly. That's what I meant. There's an LLC element.
Yep.
No, that's what I thought. Okay, so for the folks that are watching us, we're running this on video on our website. They can see your contact information. We've got it all underneath your screen, but we have a lot of people listening in on Apple, on Spotify. They're maybe out for a walk, driving their car, whatever. For those folks that are listening, what is the best way for them to contact you? How can they get a hold of you?
The best way is to call me at 805-779-1031.
All right.
And they can also visit the website, best1031online.com. And you can contact me through there, or my email address, which is james.bean@svn.com. I am a investment broker with SVN, brokered here in LA. I am able to transact in all 50 states because SVN is a national brokerage, and those are the best ways.
Perfect. James, I want to thank you. This has been awesome. And yeah, we'll have to definitely have you back for sure. So thank you so much for making time for us today. James Bean is the founder of Best 1031 Online. And that Best 1031 Online is a specialized firm that guides investors through seamless 1031 tax-deferred exchanges. And he said nationwide, whether you're up in Washington State, down in Florida, up in New York, here in LA, or somewhere in the Midwest, or Kansas City, Missouri, wherever you can imagine, James' old stomping grounds in Arizona, regardless, he can be a great resource for you. So, James, thank you very much. I appreciate having you on. Okay. We'll be seeing you soon, on and offline.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Appreciate you very much, my friend.
Yeah, you take care.
Likewise.
Yeah. I look forward to bringing you the Three Questions podcast. I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification of when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule your online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.